I spent 40 years as a construction engineer, skipping vacations, packing lunches, saving every dollar for one dream. In March, I made it real. A small cedar log cabin in the Wyoming wilderness, $185,000, 800 square feet, 12 miles from civilization. My first evening, I sat in the rocking chair I'd bought specifically for this moment, watching elk graze in the clearing, drinking coffee in silence. I called my daughter Bula. "I'm so proud of you, Dad. You earned this," she said warmly. An hour later, her husband Cornelius called. No greeting. Flat conference call voice. "My parents lost their house. They're moving in with you for a couple months." "I just bought the place to be alone." I said so. His response, "Then you should have stayed in Denver. I'll text you their arrival time." The line went dead. I sat at the kitchen table all night with an engineering notepad, grid paper I'd carried for 40 years, writing not emotional venting, but questions, timelines, resource assessments. By dawn, I had a plan. First, I visited the ranger station, asked about wolves, their territories, their sense of smell, seasonal behavior. I took careful notes, playing the nervous newcomer perfectly. Then I bought wildlife cameras, paid cash, and installed them covering the driveway and porch. Next, I drove to a butcher, 20 pounds of beef scraps and organ trimmings. Thursday afternoon, I placed the meat in calculated piles upwind from the cabin, close enough to draw predators to the area, far enough that they'd focus on the meat, not the building. I wasn't trying to endanger anyone. I was trying to educate them. I locked the cabin, drove back to Denver, set up my laptop, and waited. Friday morning, 10 a.m., Leonard and Grace arrived on camera. "This is where he's living now?" Grace wrinkled her nose. "It smells like pine and dirt." "At least it's free," Leonard said. "We'll stay a few months, let Cornelius figure out the next step." Then Grace froze. 3 wolves emerged from the tree line, gray and brown, moving with cautious purpose toward the meat piles, not aggressive, not interested in humans, just hungry. Leonard went white. "Get in the car, now!" They ran. Car doors slammed. Gravel sprayed as they reversed wildly and floored it down the driveway. The wolves, unbothered, continued eating. I closed the laptop and took a slow sip of coffee. 20 minutes later, Cornelius called, furious. "You baited those animals. My parents nearly got attacked," I answered calmly. "I live in wolf country, Cornelius. Wolves live here. This is their home. Maybe you should have asked before assuming you could use mine." He threatened. I hung up. 2 weeks passed. I settled into the routine I'd imagined. Coffee at dawn, elk in the clearing, books I'd postponed for decades. Then Bula called, crying. Cornelius had shown her the wolf footage. She'd been coached on what to say. I could hear it in every rehearsed phrase, but underneath the script she was genuinely distressed. I agreed to meet his parents in town, neutral ground. At the cafe, Leonard and Grace sat down across from me like I'd summoned them to court. "We need those keys today," Leonard said. "Family is supposed to help family," Grace added. I slid a rental agreement across the table. $1,200 a month, 6-month lease, market rate. Leonard's face reddened. "You're charging your own family rent?" Other patrons glanced over. I stood, collected my folder, nodded to the barista, and walked out. In the truck, I breathed steadily, letting the adrenaline settle. That evening, my phone became a weapon. Cousin Linda hadn't spoken in 3 years, called to express concern about my mental state. Then, a former colleague, same script, different voice. Cornelius was building a narrative. Ray Nelson is isolated, unstable, dangerous. Classic strategy. Isolate the target, control the narrative, strike when they are defenseless. That night, I emailed attorney David Thornton. Careful words, factual language. I needed advice on property protection, elder law, potential conservatorship claims. Thornton met me Thursday. I arrived with a leather portfolio, property deed, purchase documents, family diagram, written timeline of events, phone call transcripts, the rejected rental agreement, everything labeled, dated, cross-referenced. "Mr. Nelson, this is the most organized intake I've seen in years," Thornton said. 40 years in construction engineering. Documentation prevents disputes. His assessment was direct. Cornelius was attempting to establish grounds for claiming I was incompetent. The smear campaign was preliminary to a potential conservatorship claim, taking away my legal rights. The solution was to prove conclusively, right now, that I was managing my affairs competently. Revocable living trust with an independent trustee, he said. It'll cost $2,400, but it makes you essentially untouchable. The trust owns the property, not you personally. Family pressure becomes legally meaningless. Do it. How soon? 2 weeks. After leaving his office, I drove to the public library and accessed Colorado property records, databases I'd navigated before during my engineering career. I entered Bula and Cornelius's address. A home equity line of credit hit me like cold water. $35,000, taken out 8 months ago. Single signature, Cornelius's name only. I printed the documents with hands that didn't shake but wanted to. That same week, Bula called, stress overriding caution, and mentioned Cornelius had been talking about putting my cabin in a family trust for estate planning purposes. The property value had probably already gone up since March, she noted. He'd suggested it weeks ago. Every word was a piece clicking into place. I scheduled a medical evaluation with Dr. Patricia Chen the following Monday, specifically to preempt any competency challenge. She conducted comprehensive cognitive testing, memory recall, clock drawing, counting backward by sevens from 100. When finished, she handed me a signed, stamped letter. Patient alert and oriented, cognitively intact, no signs of dementia, confusion, or diminished capacity. $240, worth every penny. 2 days after I signed the trust documents, Cornelius drove up fast, spraying gravel. I calmly set down my tools, started recording video, and stood at the top of the porch steps, elevated position, him approaching uphill. You set up a legal scheme to steal from your own daughter. His face was red, movements aggressive. The trust protects my assets and ensures Bula inherits appropriately. It's completely legal. Unless she divorces me, that's what you really want. You have no legal claim to my property. The trust formalizes that reality. I'll get a lawyer. I'll contest this. I'll make sure you never see Bula again. You're threatening to isolate my daughter from me because I protected my own property. That's interesting. Leave my property now or I'll call the sheriff for trespassing. He stormed back to his car. I uploaded the footage to cloud storage and emailed a copy to Thornton. Evidence, hostile confrontation. A week later, an adult protective services caseworker named Margaret Willows appeared at my door. Complaint filed by Cornelius and Leonard. Allegations, threatened family members with weapons, exhibited paranoid behavior, refused medical care, struggled with basic tasks, made irrational financial decisions. I let her inside immediately, offered coffee, and told her up front, I'm in a property dispute with family members. I suspect this complaint is part of that conflict, not genuine concern. My cabin was clean, organized, bills filed systematically, fridge stocked with fresh food. I handed her Dr. Chen's evaluation, 2 days old, comprehensive, signed. She read it carefully. Most people in your situation don't have current medical documentation. I anticipated false allegations. I wanted evidence ready. 10 days later, case closed, complaint determined unfounded, appears motivated by family property dispute rather than genuine welfare concerns. Then, Thornton discovered something else. Leonard and Grace had been using my cabin address to receive official mail, Wyoming Department of Family Services, a bank, Social Security. They'd opened accounts claiming Wyoming residency. My camera footage proved they'd visited exactly once and never returned. Mail fraud, benefits fraud, potentially federal crimes. I drove to the mailbox in gloves, photographed each envelope carefully, placed them in an evidence bag, and called Thornton. We reported everything to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Assistant U.S. Attorney James Morrison reviewed the footage and called me within days. We have sufficient evidence for federal investigation. Meanwhile, Thornton found that Bula and Cornelius's home had 3 missed mortgage payments, $8,400 in arrears. Notice of default filed. First step toward foreclosure. He was counting on your cabin to solve his financial crisis, Thornton said. When your trust blocked that plan, he had no backup. Then he mentioned an unconventional option. I could purchase the defaulted debt anonymously through an LLC. I'd become the creditor. Cornelius would never know. I walked my property that evening, thinking it over. If I bought the debt, I controlled Cornelius's future, power I'd never wanted. But if the bank foreclosed, Bula would lose her home. She was innocent in all this. The next morning, do it. But Bula can't know yet. $31,000 from my savings, Mountain Holdings LLC. Cornelius received notification his loan had been sold, no information about the new creditor. By mid-August, my position had transformed completely. Leonard and Grace faced federal investigation. Cornelius's mortgage was secretly under my control. My property was legally untouchable. But I felt no triumph, only weariness. This was supposed to be peaceful retirement. I texted Bula. We need to talk. Can you come to the cabin this weekend? Just you. It's important. She arrived Saturday at noon, tense and worried. I'd made chicken salad sandwiches, her childhood favorite. We started with coffee and small talk, but the folder on the table kept drawing her eyes. I told her everything, systematically, chronologically. The notice of default, 3 missed mortgage payments, her home nearly gone. The $35,000 HELOC Cornelius had taken out without her signature. The recording of his threatening confrontation on my porch, the APS false complaint where he tried to have her father declared incompetent, Leonard and Grace's federal fraud using my address. She moved through disbelief, then doubt, then devastation. When she saw the APS complaint, she broke, not gentle tears, wrenching sobs. I let her cry without offering platitudes. When she could speak, "How long have you known?" "Pieces since May, everything since July." "Months? You've known for months that my marriage is a lie, that I'm in financial danger, and you didn't tell me?" "If I had told you in May with no proof, would you have believed me? Or would Cornelius have explained it away?" Quietly, knowing I was right. Probably not. I refilled her coffee, pushed the sugar bowl toward her. She liked it very sweet when stressed, detail from childhood. Then I told her the choice she had to make. "If you leave Cornelius and file for divorce, I'll forgive the mortgage debt on your house. You'll own it free and clear. I will help you rebuild. But understand, if you stay with him, I can't protect you from what's coming." She left exhausted, carrying a folder of document copies without looking back. I stood in the driveway, wondering if I'd just lost my daughter or saved her. 5 days later, federal agents arrested Leonard and Grace in Colorado. Bula called, shaken. Were you involved in this?" I reported crimes to the proper authorities. What happened after that was the justice system doing its job. Cornelius called screaming. I handed the phone to Thornton, who was sitting in my cabin specifically for this moment. "Mr. Harrison, this is David Thornton, legal counsel for Ray Nelson. Any attempt to defame him will result in immediate legal action." Click. Friday, Cornelius tried to sell the house, desperately needing cash for his parents' legal defense. The title search revealed the problem. The mortgage was owned by Mountain Holdings LLC. He couldn't sell without the lien holder's approval. He called Thornton in a panic. Saturday morning, a certified letter arrived at his door. I would forgive the entire debt, $43,400, on 3 conditions. Sign divorce papers with no asset claims, sign a legal waiver relinquishing any claims to my property or estate, sign a sworn statement acknowledging he had no right to involve me in his financial problems. Deadline: 72 hours. Bula had already filed for divorce the day before. When Cornelius called her to fight this together, her response was simple. "Sign the papers, Cornelius. It's over." Monday morning, he appeared at Thornton's office, disheveled, unshaven, hands shaking. He signed every document. When it was done, he asked quietly, "Can I at least keep the house?" "Once the divorce is final, the house will be deeded to Bula, free and clear." He left without another word. Leonard and Grace received 2 years supervised probation, $45,000 in restitution, and a permanent ban from federal benefit programs. As I left the courthouse, Leonard caught my eye across the lobby. He looked away first. I felt no triumph, only closure. Bula found a small house in Cody, 15 minutes from my cabin, view of the Absaroka Mountains. I provided the down payment as a gift. She landed a third-grade teaching position and started immediately. We spent a weekend painting rooms and assembling furniture together, rebuilding our relationship through practical acts of service. Some days she was optimistic, other days she was angry, at Cornelius, at herself, even at me for not telling her sooner. I listened without defending myself. On a crisp September evening, she drove to the cabin for dinner. We cooked spaghetti together and ate on the porch despite the cooling weather. A small herd of elk emerged from the tree line to graze in the clearing. We sat in matching rocking chairs. I'd bought a second one after she moved nearby and watched in comfortable silence. Thank you, Dad, for fighting for me, even when I didn't understand it, for being patient while I figured things out. You're my daughter. I'll always fight for you. You could have walked away and protected just yourself. You didn't. That was never an option. She smiled, genuinely smiled for the first time in months. Look at that big bull elk. He's magnificent. That's my favorite. I see him almost every evening. I already love it here. This feels like home. It is home, for both of us now. Later, after Bula drove away, I sat alone on the porch, rocking slowly, watching the last light fade from the mountains. I thought back to March, buying this cabin filled with hope, then having that peace threatened by one phone call. The journey from March to September had felt like years, but I'd navigated it without losing myself, without becoming cruel, without abandoning my values. I protected what mattered using law and strategy instead of anger and retaliation. My daughter was safe, building a new life 15 minutes away. My property was secure. The antagonists faced appropriate consequences, but weren't destroyed beyond recovery. They could rebuild if they chose better paths. As stars appeared above the mountains, I allowed myself a small smile. This is what I'd wanted all along. Quiet evenings, wildlife, mountain air, and now my daughter close enough to share it with. Not the retirement I'd planned, better, because it was earned.